What's going on, guys? This is VinylicPuma, back with another Borderlands video, and today I'd like to give you guys some of my thoughts and opinions on a lot of the new information we got concerning Borderlands 3. For those of you not in the know, Gearbox put out a gameplay reveal today that went over a bunch of new information with the game, and I would like to go over some of the new features and systems surrounding a lot of the weapons and other gear that they showed off during the gameplay reveal. Now, as a quick disclaimer, this video is going to be a little less polished or more off the cuff than usual, so if I do make some mistakes here and there, like I did when talking about that initial reveal trailer, well, you know why. Also, my bad on some of the pixelation with some of the gameplay reveal footage I'm showcasing in this video. It's not a long night situation, but it is worth noting I recorded the YouTube live stream footage in real time, and thus the quality isn't going to be like super consistent, and there is going to be some pixelation here and there. But enough of me blabbering, let's talk about some of the new information we learned about the loot systems, the weapon systems, as well as just some of the new guns and weapons we learned about from the gameplay reveal. So a really interesting thing that they showcased earlier on in the gameplay reveal was that a few of the guns in Borderlands 3 will end up having an alt fire mode. So presumably, you can hit a toggle on your controller or keyboard that will allow you to get a totally different firing mode for some of the guns you can come across. And to demonstrate this, the devs showcased a Vladov pistol that went from standard automatic fire to firing little rockets. They also showcased this in a few more instances, with one of the more notable examples to me being how some Maliwan lasers can seemingly swap from fire to shock element in real time, thus allowing you to potentially deal damage from both sources without necessarily needing to swap weapons to get a different element. This is a really cool system if you ask me, especially when it comes to that later example that I just mentioned, where you can potentially swap weapons on the exact same gun in real time. It's also likely that legendaries and uniques, when we do start to see more of them be revealed to us, will likely have custom alt fire modes that are unique to them. So in a way, you could be getting like 2 legendary guns in one, or maybe 2 uniques in one, or maybe you're getting a unique firing mode for one, and then it has like a standard firing mode, sort of like we saw with that Vladov pistol. All in all, though, I think this is a cool system, and maybe I heard this wrong, but I think they said you can specialize in these alt modes, which implies there might be some kind of proficiency system. Don't quote me on that, I'm not sure if that's the case, but if that's true, then it's possible Borderlands 3 may also be introducing proficiencies involving alt fire mode, in addition to potentially just regular weapon proficiencies. Again, I want to stress that I don't think this is necessarily confirmed, but if it is true, it would be kind of cool if you could kind of specialize in alt fire modes for pretty much any weapon. Now, the next thing I'd like to discuss involves a likely familiar subject, but that is the subject of manufacturer gimmicks. If you're someone that played a lot of Borderlands 2 or the pre-sequel, then you'll know that all of the guns in the game from various manufacturers have an overarching theme or gimmick to them, like how Hyperion weapons have reverse recoil, which makes them more accurate as you fire. Jacob's weapons have high critical hit damage but are non-elemental, and pretty much all Torgue weapons are explosive. Borderlands 3 appears to have really expanded on this system, and now each weapon type within each manufacturer seems like it could potentially be a lot different from weapons from other manufacturers. A great example of this is how they described in the gameplay that Hyperion shotguns now deploy an energy shield while the player is aiming down sights. This ends up being radically different from a TDR shotgun, where when thrown, it spawns some legs and then walks around shooting enemies, sort of like you might have seen in Borderlands 2 with the legendary Deliverer shotgun. There's even a decent amount of variation between weapons of the same manufacturer, which is great to see too. If my memory serves me correctly, there was a TDR pistol they threw that spawned homing MIRVs, which sought out targets. This, of course, contrasts the TDR weapons with legs and allows a lot more variety and uniqueness within each individual manufacturer. And it's a nice change to, say, all Dahl weapons can be burst fire, all Torgue weapons must explode, and all Maliwan weapons have an element. Obviously, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it is really cool to see a lot of individual variation between specific weapon types within a given manufacturer, and it's also really interesting to see how each compare with other manufacturers. So maybe you're getting a shielded shotgun one time, or maybe the other time you're getting a gun that walks around and shoots with legs. It's going to be a lot of fun once we get our hands on the game to really explore a lot more of this stuff in depth, and it's nice to see we're getting a lot more variation this time around beyond the overarching manufacturer gimmicks from the previous games. This Borderlands 3 gameplay reveal also revealed what is possibly the very first unique weapon we've seen in Borderlands 3 so far, which is the Killing Word pistol. Its red text is, "His death will carry death eternal," and when fired, it has this unique looking sound wave projectile that has a muzzle flash that resembles a volume meter that you might find on a soundboard, which is really cool. As for its special effect, it appears that it has an unlimited magazine size, but that comes at the expense of potentially being able to heat up and break. Based on what I can tell, this doesn't necessarily appear or mean that guns in Borderlands 3 have weapon durability. It just seems like what happens based on some of the animations I've seen from the gameplay reveal, that you kind of have a magazine limit. It's just that you overheat and then that magazine breaks and then you have to put a new one in. Again, I don't think this is a weapon durability system since I didn't really see this appear on any of the other guns throughout the gameplay reveal, but either way, it's really cool to see this new unique weapon and what is ultimately the first unique weapon we've seen out of Borderlands 3 so far. Perhaps the most interesting development or revelation from this whole gameplay reveal, though, is how Gearbox appears to be using an entirely new loot system for Borderlands 3 that has some really interesting ramifications. In previous games, whatever the boss dropped or whatever appeared in a chest or container required the players to compete over whatever drops were there, as there was really only ever one instance of that particular loot drop. This was always kind of a pain in previous games since you had to deal with loot ninjas, or in the case of Borderlands 2 in particular, if you were part of a party, only one player would be able to get that Norfleet. Though there were some dual dupe glitches that people used to do so everybody could receive an item, but for the most part, and if you were playing the game as intended, there was really only one instance of that Norfleet dropping when it actually dropped. For Borderlands 3, on the other hand, it appears that Gearbox is using an instanced loot system where, from what I can tell, chests seem to spawn an exact duplicate of whatever drops. So if you get a nice purple or blue rarity item to drop, it appears that specific duplicated version of that item will appear for each character within a given multiplayer match. In addition, it also appears that this item will scale to the given player's level. So if you're at level 20 and you join a game with your friend that's at level 5, you'll receive a level 20 version of that weapon, while your friend will receive his level 5 version. Assuming I'm understanding this all correctly, this actually presents a lot of positive benefits. Of course, the most obvious one is that you don't have to deal with other people stealing all the good loot, but it also appears to give all players an equal chance of obtaining whatever items that drop by providing them with their own duplicate copy, thus providing the convenience that dual duping provides without the exploit. That sounds awesome to me, and assuming this is actually how it works, it sounds like a really great system because I could definitely see this greatly benefiting players at higher levels, as it provides incentive for them to go and potentially help lower level players progress through the game so they can get versions of unique weapons that they might not have, but that they want to properly scale to their level. To illustrate this, or I guess just explain it in another way, imagine you're playing Borderlands 2 for a moment, but you're level 53, while your friend is at level 23 and he's playing through the Captain Scarlet DLC. You help him through the DLC, and at the end, both of you get a greed pistol that matches your respective levels, rather than getting one that's at like level 19 or so that you have no use for, while your friend is probably only really going to use for like 4 levels. You can then take this upgraded greed back into your level 53 solo game where you're fighting level 53 enemies. This seems like a great feature because it essentially eliminates one of the main reasons many Borderlands 2 players used save editors in that game, and that was to get uniques and legendaries that more properly matched their high-level character's level. Again, based on what I'm hearing and seeing, it just seems like this is a really great solution to a bunch of problems that we saw in Borderlands 2. This new loot system also appears to include a new dynamic difficulty system as well. Provided you have the loot instancing on, all the damage dealt by players in a co-op match will now scale to the enemies around them, or I guess the lowest level character. So while you may have a level 50 gun on your level 50 character, it will deal the equivalent of level 10 damage to the enemies that your level 10 co-op player is fighting. So it won't be a total walk in the park to obtain adequately leveled versions of items, assuming you do decide to take advantage of this new loot instancing feature. Randy Pitchford also mentioned on the stream that you can turn all the loot instancing stuff off as well, which should be great for players that want to have more control over their gameplay experience, and at the very least, it's nice to have the ability to have features that can be toggled off. After all, and as it pertains to legendaries in particular, I could definitely see a situation where the legendary drop rates are a little bit lower in a loot instance game when compared to a non-loot instanced one. And this is simply for the fact that everybody gets a duplicated copy that scales to their level of essentially the exact same weapons. And maybe if there is some kind of like in-game trading feature between various players, sort of like we saw in Borderlands 2, it seems like a lot of loot instance guns could spread around extremely quickly. So who knows, maybe there's not a trading feature at all. I think we're going to have to really learn a lot more about all of this stuff as time goes by, and I think we will. But based on what I am seeing so far, this system seems really cool and really awesome. In fact, and in some ways, I think this may have actually been one of my favorite parts of the entire presentation. But I'm sure we will know more in the coming weeks and months. Otherwise, guys, this was just meant to be a quick overview of some of my thoughts on a lot of the announcements concerning the new guns and weapons that were featured throughout this gameplay reveal, as well as some of the new info we got on the weapon and loot systems. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to smash like, click the bell so you can be notified when I upload my next Borderlands video, and as always, and again, thank you all so much for supporting this channel. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.